They look like a mushroom. Hello, everybody. Tom Matuska here, along with Brett Wingfield with the Matuska Taxidermy Supply Company, Thursday afternoon live. And snowing out there today.
It's snowing and blowing and terrible.
You never know what the weather's going to be like around here. Just stick around, it'll change. But we had blizzard conditions in first week of April. And you looked up and at the skylights, and they were being pelted by freezing sleet and hail and snow today. And farmers are thinking about maybe getting the equipment in the field, and this isn't what they're looking forward to. But they do need a little moisture, and this isn't probably as much as they'd like, but it's every little bit helps. We're kind of dry around here, unlike some parts of the country. I saw in one of the third world countries where people raise chickens for sustenance, they've had to switch to ducks because the chickens were drowning, and ducks are able to survive in the wet conditions.
Yep, that makes sense.
True story. If you joined us last week and the previous week, we started on a tanning segment or tanning show, and we tan a lot at the Matuska Taxidermy Studio and Supply Company, and we've tanned for, man, I'd say 30 years. And when you don't know a lot about tanning, it can be overwhelming, talking about pickles and acids and fleshing and tools, and it's just overwhelming, very difficult to sort out good facts from bad facts. And through the course of teaching the Northwest Iowa School of Taxidermy and tanning a lot of our own things, we've worked the bugs out of the system, and not without a failure here and there. And when you're learning, make sure that you're always learning on something that's expendable. Don't learn on your customer's bighorn sheep or something very, very precious. Learn on maybe a deer of your own that if you lost it, won't be the end of the world. And work the bugs out of your system and develop a technique for everything that you do. You should have a procedure. And I always compare tanning to like baking a cake. Some people do it really good and some people don't. And a lot of people say, let's see, what should I put in here now? It tastes like, needs a little salt. No, it wasn't salt. And they kind of treat their tanning like that with a little bit confused ideas that they put together. So we're trying to steer you in the right direction on if you've never tanned anything before, you can watch what we do and listen to what we do. Don't be afraid to text in your questions, and Caitlin will read them to us, and we can try to answer them online. Don't be afraid to call us if you ever get in a bind and need some help, and we'll try to point you in the right direction. So last week, we took the cape and we fleshed it on the machine, and we salted it. And now typically, once it's in the salted procedure, it needs to go into the pickle of some sort. We're going to tan with a product called True Bond 1000. We've used Liquitan for years. True Bond 1000 is a very similar product. It's a tanning oil, gives excellent results. If you do your part as far as fleshing them, thinning them, everything, the True Bond 1000 will give you all the stretch and more that you will ever need. It's very safe. I feel, and I've always thought this, compared to some of the big tanneries, especially the older tanneries, we had fading. Remember some of the old deer that we had in the showroom seemed to fade, and I think it's due to chemicals, maybe a little bit fluorescent lights and things like that. But this is milder, not as harsh, gives excellent results, and this is what we're going to tan with for the process we're showing you today. So the hide, if you'll remember, We took it off the animal, and we didn't actually take it off. I think we explained the process, and you can look back in some of our archives. But this was salted. Remember, before you salt him, you want to turn the ears inside out, split your lips, butterfly them open, because you do that because that lip skin is very, very thick. And because it's so thick, salt will penetrate it, but not maybe soon enough. And you can end up with slippage along the lip line. More common with smaller or bigger animals like buffalo, elk, moose. If you don't butterfly those lips open and allow the salt to get in there quicker, you can end up with some slippage. Also, we lifted up the cartilage on the nostrils. That's another place for slippage. On the top of the snout, right behind the rhinarium of the nose, salt can't penetrate that cartilage on this side, and you can end up with a slip spot here. So we got in the habit, the way we found out all this stuff was always having a slip spot there, and we thought, how come we always get a slip spot there? It's because we weren't lifting up that cartilage from the inside. Salt could not get to that skin soon enough. Eyes on deer, maybe not so important as it is on a buffalo or an elk or moose, but there's a large donut of muscle around the eye opening, and it's real safe and a good idea to butterfly that open and pull up this apron of skin and then run your knife around there and flesh it, that big muscle off. If you don't know if you've got it good enough, I always say do what you can, and if you think you got it but you're a little bit worried that you maybe didn't get it all, this is a little cheaty, but it works great, is just do some little cross hatches. Don't cut all the way through, just do a little checkerboard in some of those areas. That's not a substitute for a good flesh job. It's actually just in addition to a good flesh job. And your salt can penetrate that really well. And then remove as much meat, and especially the fat, off of the body of the skin. And I think Brett showed you last week the American Eagle fleshing machine. Yeah. And we'll probably do a little bit more on that today. But you want the salt to be able to penetrate the meat. Salt will not go through fat. Fat is like putting down a plastic bag on it and putting salt on top. It doesn't work. You got to get the fat off. Thin areas of meat will be okay. Thick areas of meat salt will not penetrate soon enough, and you can end up with damage. So clean them up as good as you can. But remember, all of these little, we call them cape preps, prep your cape prior to the salt. All these little cape prepping techniques have to be done in a timely fashion. When you start out, this is going to take you, oh man, I suppose it took me 6-8 hours before my first cape was really ready to be salted. That's too long. And it's okay when you're learning, but that's what practice is all about, to develop a technique and speed with your knife and with your tools. You want to get this done in hour and a half. Yeah. Because nothing's protecting this cape from bacteria growth until we salt him. Now that he's salted, moisture, you can see just from how stiff he is, moisture has leaked out from here. It's kind of drawn all the moisture out, and moisture is one of your ingredients for bacteria growth. So we've got the moisture leaving, and the hair will start setting.
Yeah, so he's basically stable. If we wanted to leave him like this with the moisture element being gone, how long do you think you could have him salt dried like that?
If we were tanning him ourselves here, typically we will get him salted, and above our sink we have kind of just wood posts, like a coat hanger, and we'll hang him up through the back of the incision, like the scalp of the head. We'll hang him up like that above the sink. The water and the juices from the body will run into the sink, and we can rinse him down the drain. If we were sending it to the tannery, this is ready to go to the tannery too. If you get to this point and think, oh, I'm not going to tan this, I'm going to send it to the tannery. As this dries, fold it up, make sure that you don't leave it out too long, stretched out too long, because it takes a way bigger box for this to go in than it does for this to go in. So as soon as it starts drying somewhat firm but still bendable, you can roll it. Leather can crack, so make sure that you don't let it dry too hard and then try to fold it and crease it, because you can crack it. We roll them up and we let them dry pretty hard. We've got some in our tannery right now that'll be going to a commercial tannery, and they're hard as a rock.
Yeah, they've been there for months, at least 2 months.
Yeah, and if we let them get that dry, they have to be rehydrated. And the rehydration step is a complete extra process. We would prefer not to do it when we're tanning them ourselves. So we will get them to this point. We hang them overnight. We still want them. He's getting crusty down here, but still flexible. We have the best success by putting them in the pickle at this point. Every tanning recipe, every successful tanning recipe starts out with a pickle that I know of.
All right, we have a question from Deanna Davidson, and Deanna is wondering, will that give you a soft tan for coyote to hang on a door or wall?
If you want a soft tan, I would proceed in the same, everything up to this would be the same. You're gonna skin him, you're gonna flesh him, you're gonna do the ears, lips, get off all the fat and meat, you're gonna salt him just like that, get him into this state, then you're gonna make a pickle, which we're gonna show you how to do in a minute. To soften them, there's a couple things. A little added oil treatment, and a tumbler is a great aid, a big tumbler. And I'll explain that a little bit, but you need a little bit specialized equipment. We're showing you how to tan for the taxidermy purposes for mounting this deer head, and that's going to be a damp hide, like a wet tan hide. It's going to be glued to the mannequin. We're going to make him conform to every little crease and bulge in the mannequin has to offer, and then it's going to dry hard on that mannequin. So we do not care if this is soft and supple. Like she was talking about, maybe a wall hanging of a fox or a coyote. Everything's the same so far, and just a little bit added oil treatment at the end and some elbow grease can make it softer for you. Good so far?
So far, so good.
Should we show them how to make a pickle?
I think we should.
Okay.
What is the shelf life?
Of? Well, I answer them all. I guess I don't know. The question, shelf life on the tan cape, maybe?
Frederick, do you just want to clarify what
Maybe the
shelf
salted
life
hide?
you are wondering about?
Okay, so you can make a pickle. We make them in any plastic. If you had stainless steel's fine, but you're using salt and acid in this, and salt and acid will corrode any metal buckets and that sort of thing. We have tanned in 33-gallon garbage pails forever. A lot of our powders and chemicals come in plastic barrels, big plastic barrels that we can cut the lid off of. Those work real nice. This is just nothing more than, this is a tub with rope handles from Ace. So it doesn't matter, but this works real good. Anything that'll hold about 10 gallons. If we just have one deer head to do, many times we have tanned in a 5-gallon bucket and made our pickle in a 5-gallon bucket, and it worked real good. So you can't see in here, but there's 2 5-gallon buckets of water to equal 10 gallons. Our recipe calls for water, calls for salt, it calls for acid, and it calls for a bactericide. Did I forget anything? Nope. So I've got 10 gallons of water. I want 10 pounds of salt. 1 pound of salt per gallon of water. I have pre-weighed it out for you.
Like the cooking show.
Paula Dean?
Rachel.
Look like Paula Dean. What's her name?
Rachel.
Oh. Here's just salt, and this is the salt like we salted the deer cape with, 1 pound per gallon of water. If I had a 5-gallon bucket, I usually fill a 5-gallon bucket up a gallon short, so I'm not overflowing everywhere, and I would put 4 pounds of salt, 4 gallons of water. 10 pounds of salt to 10 gallons of water. Now, sometimes people say, I followed your directions to a T and all my hair fell out. There can be reasons for this. One is the water that we want to use is room temperature, not hot by any means. Sometimes we will mix hot water with our salt to dissolve the salt faster, but never put your hide in hot water. So we put the salt in, and we have this nice little canoe paddle, and you want to really stir up that salt. It's real important. And 10 pounds of salt is a pound of salt per gallon of water is maybe a little too much to saturate and to completely dissolve, but it's the recipe we've settled on. We may have some salt on the bottom.
Now, if they wanted to, could they put 5 gallons of water in,
Sure.
of hot water, put their 10 gallons of salt, and then put the 5 more gallons of cool water?
Sure.
Just to help
Sure.
promote.
Just so that I would say the temperature of the hide going in is going to be 75 degrees. And many times we make a pickle the day before we are actually going to use it, and hot water dissolves that salt very, very good and much better than cold water. Just don't put your hide in until the water cools down.
Okay, so Frederick says on the tanning liquid.
Oh, like Trubon? Our Trubon, I think it'll last for nearly, if it pours out of there, we'd use it.
I would say, and there's no reason that nothing's going to evaporate off of it.
No, keep the lid on. I would say years and years.
Yeah. And
Okay.
sometimes we microwave it, that
To warm
loosens
it.
it up a little
Yep.
bit too when
Yep.
we warm it up.
No, I think we've never had it go bad, and we have remnants of bottles that we didn't use, and we'll find them and bring it out. It's good. Yeah. Okay, now also in your pickle is going to go an acid, and we have used many acids. I mean, there's recipes. Every acid you can imagine could be made into a pickle. All of them give you a little bit different results. For years and years, we used formic acid. We'd buy formic acid by 55-gallon drums, and it's liquid. Formic acid is, I always tell people, if you put formic acid in the palm of your hand, eventually it's going to come out the back of your hand. It's that caustic. It's extremely dangerous to have around. When we worked with formic acid, we always suggested wearing a rubber apron, goggles, rubber gloves, respirator. I mean, it's very, very caustic stuff. There's a lot of there's safety acids. There's so many different acids on the market right now. And the one that we're using is citric acid. And citric acid comes in a granular. It'll look like your salt, so don't get mixed up whether it's salt. But it comes in a plastic bag. Citric acid you can hold in your hand like this until you add water. Once you add water to it, then it's very caustic like the formic acid. So as long as it's dry, it's a little bit like Santa flush, I guess, you know. Cleans out your drains, but it doesn't do the job till it gets into the water. But citric acid is a very good acid. Acts much like formic for us. And for the citric acid, it was 3 ounces per gallon. We have 10 gallons, so I'm going to put in 30 ounces, which I have pre-measured out. So this is 30 ounces, 3 ounces per gallon. And again, just like the salt, it goes to the bottom and sits there. When I was saying some people, we give them our recipe and they say it didn't work. If we just dump that salt in, it goes to the bottom and it doesn't dissolve and it doesn't do the work that the salt needs to do. Same with the citric acid. If you dump it in there, that citric acid went right to the bottom of the bucket and it's sitting there. It's not going to do what it needs to do in your hide. It's not going to set your hair. So that needs to be stirred up and agitated really, really well.
We do have a question from Jacob Carrier, and Jacob says, I see some people who don't salt their fur before putting it in the pickle. Does it make the same results?
I would say if you don't salt your hide and you put it in the pickle and it works for you, keep doing it. Whatever works, keep doing it. We're gonna show you what we do, and I don't deviate, and we don't deviate from this process. You've been doing this as long as I had, not quite, but a long time. And when it comes to tanning, once you have above average results, exceptional results, don't change anything. Don't start experimenting unless you're going to find something expendable that you can afford to lose. I know there's a lot of people, Brian Hendricks for one, I think takes the entire animal. The whole animal, like a bobcat, for instance, and puts the deceased animal into the pickle. I have never done that. I've watched it being done. I foresee a whole lot of, what am I going to do with this carcass, and stuff like that. But I think he has exceptional results, exceptional results. So that is a method that we don't do. And there's reasons for everything that we do. Salting the hide, remember that we told you last week, bacteria takes temperature to grow, and it takes moisture to grow. The moisture in the animal's skin, just the moisture in the skin is enough moisture, and just room temperature is ample warmth for that to decompose. By removing either one of those components, the moisture or cooling down the temperature, you have stopped bacteria growth. Yep. Putting it in the freezer, that's why we put animals in the freezer. Put animals in the freezer, you took away one of the environments for bacteria growth. You lowered the temperature and you stopped the bacteria from growing. Or what if we take the moisture away and the salt wicks the moisture away? So that's why we salt it. That's the explanation. If you do it and it comes out good for you, don't change it.
Another thing that you've mentioned before, and they'll probably hear it again when we get further into the tanning process, I think by removing all of that moisture, now the hide is thirsty for the acid in the pickle, so it will absorb this better than a hide that hasn't been salted and is full of moisture anyways.
Kind of like a sponge.
Yeah. Yep.
So if your hide is somewhat dry, it's going to want to suck this up. Now, that citric acid is very, very caustic with a small amount of water in it, but now that it's diluted into this, I can put my hand in here and it's basically harmless.
You'll be okay
my
with
hand didn't
3
fall
fingers.
off.
No, I think this portion of it it's always scary working with acids and safety and so forth, but with just some very simple common sense things, this will be rendered not neutral, but it will be safe just with the addition of water. So it's a very safe, you can carry your pickle from area to area at this point in time. You're not going to hurt anything just in that raw state.
I would taste it just to show you how harmless it is, but I won't do that. Okay, I also we started doing this years and years ago, is adding bactericide. Remember, bacteria is the enemy of tanning and hides and hide preservation. Bacteria is really bad. That's why we want to keep our area all. We have a spray bottle. We spray up our area. If we get blood or juices, body fluids on, we wipe them up. We keep our hides, somewhat clean. And in the pickle, we got in the habit of putting in a good grade bactericide. This is X Effect, which we use in the shop. And I think it says an ounce per 5 gallons. It's reasonably 1 ounce to 5 gallons. I've got 10 gallons here. I'm going to put in 2 ounces. Not critical. If you put too much in, it's going to smell more fragrant, I guess. If you don't put enough in, a lot of people don't use it anyway, you're going to be fine. I'm going to guesstimate, you can measure it out, I'm going to guesstimate 2 ounces.
Perfect.
We do have a question from Frankie Reiner, and Frankie is wondering what is the minimum ambient temperature that allows the pickle to still work?
Oh, I think, I have people a lot of times tell me that they're tanning out in the barn or in a garage or something, and your water is just above freezing. I don't think that's going to ruin it, but I don't think you get as good a results or as fast a results. I would say I would like it in the 50, 60, 70, 50, 60, something like that. Also in the summertime, you know, you get 90, 100 degrees in a shop sometimes. That maybe makes me a little uncomfortable too. Yeah. We've never lost a hide, even though it's got real warm in here sometimes. I wouldn't do it outside in the sun or anything. 60 to 70 would be maybe ideal.
And then how thin should deer hides be shaved?
Right now for this process, not so important. But I always tell people, and you can give your advice here, I'd say 2/3 of their original thickness.
Yeah, as thin as possible. As thin as you're comfortable making it, and then a little thinner is probably better.
There's a, if you look up leather or skin, anatomy of skin, there's a large, first you have your hair, then you have your epidermis, and then the hair goes through and it's seated just below the epidermis. When the epidermis sloughs off from bacteria growth, sometimes your hair will come with it. And then underneath that, I think you have corium. And corium is the thick part of the skin. It's real thick compared to the epidermis. And you will want to be able to, you want to shave it all the way down to, but not into the hair roots. Yep. So pretty darn thin. I was just telling somebody today about, or was it yesterday, Jimmy Willard from eastern Minnesota. And I don't know if he still does, but he'd tan hides for people. And we bought a hide tanning from him at the Iowa Taxidermy Show. So we sent him a hide, and he sends it back wet tan. And we knew how big it was, and we sent it. And when we got it, it just kept stretching and stretching. And the secret to successful tanning and stretch is thinning it with the machine. And if you're fleshing it, I had somebody, like I say, we answer a lot of phone calls on fleshing, you know, how do we do this, how do we do that, how thin should I get it? And I had somebody tanning a hide yesterday, and they said they were doing it with a, you know, just a draw knife, like this type of knife. And you will, I won't say never, but I could never thin a hide with something like this. We even have razor sharp Sheffield knives like this that for bears, and they will actually thin the skin. I couldn't do it. You have to get them very, very thin for a successful job. Somebody last week texted in about the mini flesh awl. Mini flesh awl, you can thin faces. I know some of the tanneries use the mini flesh awl because you see the marks on the hides. But a mini flesh awl will thin certain spots, but to get it very even, I couldn't do it. Yep. I won't say it can't be done because somebody's going to be able to do it. Okay, now, how do we know if this is right? First of all, we know that we put 10 pounds of salt in 10 gallons of water. You saw me do it. But the acid is like, how do we know? So you want to always check your acid content with litmus paper. And your litmus paper will be a little test strips on a roll like this. And I'm going to peel off a little bit. I want my pH of this acid to be about a 2. And I look on the chart, and a 2 is going to be red to orange. If you zoom in on that, you can see kind of to the red side of orange. So I take my litmus paper, and I dip it in here, and then I'm going to lay it right on here. And now you can see the litmus paper falls right down there in 1 to 2. Now, also, if you wanted to really check it, you could test water to make sure it works. Here's plain old water, and I'm going to dip it in there. And water just stayed bright yellow. So water is way up above 3. If I wanted to take and put it in a little bit of acid, that turns real red. And acetic acid is down below 1. So if you're ever wondering if your litmus paper is working, you can always test it in straight acid, or you can test it in water, or what you really need it for is to test it in the pickle. And that's a pretty good strong pickle. I'm probably a little closer to 1 than I am to 2. But 2 or less, would you say?
I think so, yeah.
2 or less?
I wouldn't want to get much above that.
And I think that should answer what should the pH level be and how to adjust the pH level.
Okay, to adjust it, say you are, okay, your acidic range is towards the red side. Your basic range is towards the green side. If I'm up into one of the greens, that means I didn't put acid in, or I didn't, whatever I thought was acid isn't acid, or I didn't put enough in. So if you're up into the green and you need to get it down to 2, first thing I do is stir it really good, because that acid could be sitting down in the bottom, not doing its work job. So stir it up real good, then test. If you still need more, you can always add more citric acid. Do it by small amounts. Little, 5-ounce cup, put a little in, stir it up, test again. Need more, stir it up, test again. We've not had problems with it getting a stronger pickle, except we seem to think on antelope. The antelope have wispy hairs, and sometimes they will get curly if you leave them in a pickle for a long time. So antelope, we try to get them fleshed, tanned soon. Most animals you won't have any problem with. If it were too acidic, say you're way down, deep into the red, add water. Add a little bit of water, and then say you put a gallon of water in, add another pound of salt. And your bactericide should be fine. Okay, so this pickle is good. Now, say you're gonna, say you made a great big pickle, 20-gallon batches. We make 20-gallon batches quite a bit here. You want to put all of your hides in at one time. Don't put one in today, one in tomorrow, one in the next day. The minute we put a hide in here tonight, we can check that pickle in the morning and it will no longer be at 2. It will have raised, and the acid and stuff went into this hide, and you're not going to have a real healthy pickle for the next hide. So put them all in at one time, within one setting. And this is this hide. Now, he's kind of perfect for what I'd like to put in the pickle. I'm not going to shake off any of the salt. We're going to put him right into the pickle. It'll dissolve in the pickle. A little extra salt won't hurt. He's a little dry down here. That will soften up in the pickle. Take the whole deer. And now we punched him, right? We punched him last week. We showed you how to coat him. So I have a tag on him also. But if for some reason that tag comes off, we still have that punch code. And I would like to push him up and down and make sure that that pickle gets to all areas of this hide. Spend just a couple minutes up and down. And now if I had another one, I would stick another one in and another one. We can probably get, in a 10-gallon pickle, we could maybe get 3. 3 if they're not too big.
And how are you determining that?
Just so they're not so compressed in here that they can't move around. I'd like them to be able to float or sink or whatever they want to do, but If you put 4 in here, I can't even push this down because I think you can't get a even distribution of the pickle. Now, just for the short time that he's been here, see how he started to turn blue already? Starting to turn kind of a bluish color. And that I can tell my pickle's starting to work already. Now, he can stay in here for an extended period of time, but in our shop, we would probably pull this out tomorrow if we have time, and we'll start fleshing on it. You could start fleshing on him in 2 hours, but you're going to notice that as you get into the thicker spots, the color will be of rare beef. And so you want it to be that blue color through and through. But we've had hides in the pickle. Just told somebody the other day, the aoudad that we have out in the showroom was in a pickle for 7 years. That's not optimum, and it happened to be an aoudad that I shot and just wasn't getting around to doing it. The only thing that'll happen is these hides will float to the top, and they'll dry out the part that's not in the water. We just plunge them back down and stir them up. Some people will make a little wood grate with a concrete block on them or weight them down. We don't find that's necessary. Just as we walk past them, grab the paddle and replunge them down in.
We've got Craig Robertson that says, hey, Tom and Brett, if your pickle is too strong, what is the result?
The result, or how to do it, what to do. The result would be, most of the time, I don't think you're going to have damage. Like I said, the antelope sometimes get curly hairs. People say that you can burn the hair. I've not seen that, I don't think, and we've had strong pickles. But to correct that, I would put in a little more water. Just put in a gallon of water, retest it. Gallon of water, retest it. Okay, should we put him down?
Yeah.
And then I think you guys kind of covered on this. We've got a couple different people tuning in, David and Donald. The first is, how long can you use the same pickle if you keep up with the pH? And the second is, how long does a batch of pickle last before you should start a new batch?
You talk, I'm getting hoarse.
Well, correct me. But I would say your pickle in the state that it's in now, once you put hides in it, is pretty much stable. So you can continue with these hides in this pickle, like you said with the aoudad, by simply freshening it up for an indefinite amount of time. However, you wouldn't want to introduce new hides into an old pickle past, what, a few hours?
I would say.
So if you were to do a batch of pickle and then 2 days later have another hide that you wanted to do, it'd probably be safest to make a fresh pickle. And really, the pickle portion is not terribly expensive. What you're saving mostly is water, a few pounds of salt, and your pickling solution is relatively small.
That's right. A lot of you said it good. A lot of people, want to conserve money. They want to save money, and they want to make that pickle go into the next batch, Once you see this pickle, by next week, after we flesh him, put him back in, pull him out, flesh him, put him back in, the looks of that pickle, you don't want to use him on something else. It's drawing out all kinds of impurities and juices and fluids from all the plumbing of the hide, all the vein work throughout the hide. It's taking blood out of the hair and blood out of the skin. So you're not going to want to use it again. And like you said, all you're saving is water, because 2 ounces of this is pretty non-expensive, and the salt is inexpensive, and the citric acid, there's probably not $3 worth of material in there other than your water.
Yeah, for the importance of balance the cost versus the expense, I'd say that the importance of the hide is much more valuable than the pickle.
Okay, we've got one more question. David Schaefer is wondering, do you check your pickles after you put your hides in to maintain the proper pH?
Yes, and you're going to find that that pickle by tomorrow morning will have raised to an easy 3+. And I used to panic, and I would run for the acid, and I would dump in more acid, and I'd go, oh my gosh, just in the nick of time I saved it. And the next day I'd check it, and it's up to 3 again. I go, oh no, and I grab the acid. And you can do that for a month, and you can go through $30 worth of acid. I call it chasing the pH. You're never going to catch up to it. We find that if this is good now, it was 2 when we put it in. We stir it up. That hide is pickled. It's good. We stopped adding acid. So we don't do that anymore, and we have no failures from it. Okay, now, last week, to get ahead of you here, we also made a pickle up when you were sleeping, and during our broadcast. No, we made a pickle up, and we put one of the hides in a pickle, a couple of the hides in a pickle, just to show you where we go from here. So the hide that we just put in now, when we pull it out next week, it's going to look just like this.
And this has been drained, so it's not.
We drained it. Good point. You'll have pickle running everywhere. Above our sink, like I said, we have little wood broomstick posts, like coat hangers, and we'll take the cape out of the pickle, and we'll hold him above the pickle to drain a little bit, and then we'll hang him up by the back of the scalp. We don't hang them by the nose, and we used to have students do that all the time, and as they do a better job of fleshing all this, this gets really thin. But the hide stays heavy because it's full of water, and you can hang them up by the muzzle, and it can rip very badly. So that's why we don't do that. But drain him a little bit and pull him out and start working on him. And now, just to explain it before we start, we're going to do a little fleshing on him, and you guys can text in and ask questions. But there's no way this can be mounted without being thinned. Any of you that know how to mount a deer, you're going to tuck these lips, and these lips are some places a 1/4 inch thick. You can't tuck them like that, so they've got to be really, really paper thin. The eyes have to be split and thinned. Any leather that's probably more than an 1/8 inch thick is going to draw. And the worst thing for taxidermists to experience is leave a deer when they go home at night and they're so proud of it, and the next morning the stitches are starting to show. A day later they're showing, and boom, they're popping. This leather has so much power when it dries and draws apart. That's why thin leather has to be thin to win.
Yep, absolutely. The thicker, imagine this way, the thicker it is, the more moisture content it will hold, and so the more shrink it's going to have. As that moisture leaves, it's going to shrink more, it's going to pull more, and so the thinner it is, the less moisture it'll have in it when you mount it.
One of these, not this one, the other one I guess has a big old bullet hole in him, and you're going to spend all that time to sew up that bullet hole and make it just beautiful, and you can't even find it. And after he shrinks, all of a sudden all you see is stitches. Another thing, how many of you have to use pliers to sew through your skin? If your skin is properly thinned, you should be able to do it with 2 fingers and a round needle. You could sew right through there, over to the other side. It should be effortless to sew up the back of a deer cape. And this is a long cut, like we talked also about shortcuts. A lot of people, and we will if we have the choice, but not sometimes the people do it for us. A shortcut would be where you make your Y incision from antler to antler, and then you just come down a few inches down the back of the neck. This is already together like he was in real life and tubed off of the animal. So I know you like to sew that all up ahead of time and then treat it as a as a tube skin, and that works really, really nice. Would you want to show them what these look like when they go in the machine now?
Sure, sure.
Real quick, do you need to check the salinity?
I didn't, but you can, and there is a salinometer. Did I say it right?
I think so.
A salinometer or a salinometer, and it's a glass bulb, and we have really nice ones with Matuska Taxidermy on them, and it's a glass bulb. It's like floating. What do they float eggs in when they make? They float eggs in making pickles or something like that.
Yeah,
and if there's enough salt in it, the egg will float.
Yep.
That's exactly what the salinometer is. It's a glass test tubey type thing with a scale on it, and you want it about 35% salt solution, and you put it in your pickle, and it will bob up and down, and pretty soon it'll settle at 25, 30, 35, 40, whatever. If it's at 40, you know, you got way plenty salt. If it's at 20, you know, you better add some more salt. We rely on 1 pound of salt per gallon of water, and we used to check it when I first started tanning, and I can find you my salinometer, but we don't use one anymore.
Yeah.
Are you supposed to rehydrate cape after salting before you pickle it?
If it gets too dry on you, you will want to rehydrate it. And a rehydration bath is, you have to look it up, but we try not to have to do it. It's an extra step, and we save a lot of time by not rehydrating them. It's water, small amount of salt. I'd put in a little bactericide, and you got to watch them so careful because there's nothing much protecting them in the rehydration bath. So you put them in, agitate them a little bit. We used to have an old wringer washer that went that's how we put salt in there, and that's how we rehydrated all our capes. But when we hang them overnight, typically they're like when I put this one in. This one is all softened up already, and he was dry enough when we put him in. So I like to not do a rehydration, have to do a rehydration bath. If they get too hard on you, they will rehydrate in the pickle, but it'll take a longer time. And if you have to do a rehydration bath, you know, water, not a pound of salt per gallon, I think maybe a half a pound or less. Salt per gallon, little splash of bactericide, and watch them. You can't leave them in there for 48 hours. You know, you're gonna have to watch them. 2, 3, 4 hours, be checking them.
And they don't have to be completely supple when they come out of that rehydration, because they'll continue to rehydrate in the pickle.
They rehydrate real good in the pickle. It might not be the next day or 2 days after, but within a week you're going to see they're ready to flesh. Okay?
Should we put it on the machine?
You do it. You should see some better results today than last week, now that he's changed color a little bit. And like we told you last week, this is American Eagle fleshing machine. A great machine, razor sharp blade. We put a new blade on. Blades will should last for a season if you don't wreck them trying to sharpen them.
Take care of them. Clean your blade. I think the salt probably has a little to do with corrosion and so forth. Don't watch for bullet holes. Check your cape over really well. Sometimes you'll have bullet fragments that'll be just in the edge that'll be hanging in your skin. Those will ding your blade. But last week, our goal in using the machine was just to take the large fleshy areas off and to remove the fat to get it ready to salt. Now that it's been in the pickle, now we're ready to actually thin the leather. And that's what we have here. We have just the leather, a little bit of residue up on the high side, but now we're going to start reducing. Tom was saying 2/3. Today we'll take one good even pass. One thing that will help with tanning and getting a real nice even flesh is to have a system. When you come to the fleshing machine, a lot of times you'll see people come in that haven't used it much. They'll go a little bit here, and then they'll go a little bit here, and a little bit over here. And as you change directions and overlap, you're going to continually getting small areas thinner and thinner and thinner, and that's kind of a negative. So what we want to do today is we're going to take one even pass over the whole thing, And we checked the machine just a little bit. This is what we're gonna have after our first layer. I'll show you that. And just check it on an area that's gonna be off of the hide. And this seems to be cutting really nice. And so then I'm just gonna start my system. You can start any way you want to, but the thickest area of the hide is typically behind the back of the neck. So we'll start right up there. I'm gonna take a pass about keeping my hands about a foot apart, 10 inches to a foot apart. I'm just gonna take a nice, present the blade across like that. And I'm gonna go all the way down. And you'll see that we really haven't got an even color, and I'm not really looking for an even color. That will come later. More importantly to me, we just wanna have a nice even, one even area that comes off. So I'm gonna continue down like so. And actually, we mentioned last week, you can tell how deep you're cutting by stopping and pulling back. And you can see this is a pretty thin amount that's coming off. So we'll continue down the whole thing. And just keep going. Now I'm being kind of mindful in my hands of the thickness of the hide and where I'm fleshing. I really haven't gotten in toward the brisket, which I know to be thinner. I haven't done anything around the face, so I can move fairly quickly through this big stuff through here. I've made one pass down that side. Now I'll go to the middle of the hide, like this. And we'll just keep going. Nice with that new blade, really nice. Now that I'm getting into the middle and down low, I know I'm feeling a little bit of thickness difference as I get down toward the brisket, so I'm not gonna pull in quite as much. And I'm just gonna go right down here. You had asked before, Tom, about direction, the direction of the hair, and that's not really gonna matter as we're going to the mid portion of the hide, but if we were going around the edge, we usually like to have the hair pointed down, like so. I'll show you that in just a second. In fact, we can come to that edge now. Once we've gone down this portion, which you can see there, we'll turn the hide sideways and get all the way out here to the edge, like that, with the hair down.
What do you use to keep your blades from rusting?
Keeping what?
What do you use to keep your blades from rusting?
Flexing?
Rusting.
Or rusting.
Rust.
You should clean them. We don't. Hence we have a lot of rusty blades. If you use them enough, they'll stay kind of clean. But WD-40, it's not bad to have some kind of tool that you can run on the edge of your blade and then dry them, like maybe with a rag or something, and then get them spinning and spray WD-40 on is a big, big, big help.
That'll make a big difference. It'll really, taking care of them will really extend the life of them. I'm gonna turn that way and then just continue. I'll show you just a little bit. You can get as far up into this hide as you would like to, as you're comfortable with. You'll notice that you get into some thin areas of the face. The body contours change, so you have to take a different grip with your hands often. But you can get right up in close to the eyelids if you'd like. We're gonna stay back a little ways just because I don't want to cut a hole in front of all of you. But no, we'll get up into the face and clean this up. And right now this is just kind of rough. We're not trying to make him look pretty, that will come. But right now we're just taking off a nice even layer. What am I forgetting to tell him?
We used to go to the NTA and different shows, and Jerry would always be there with the Quebec fleshing machines, and he would spend about 7 minutes per deer cape, and they were as good as anything you see from the tannery. They were beautifully fleshed in 7 minutes. So
I'm not doing good?
you're doing great. But take your time, try to do a thorough job, and like you said, this isn't a beauty contest. The first time through, he's not going to be maybe as pretty as you want, but as this goes back into the pickle, that leather is going to turn whiter and prettier, and when you see just before we tan, these capes are going to look really, really pretty, like a factory job.
And I'm getting really close to done on this first pass. This is, you can see what we've done and what we haven't done. What's there? So we'll just finish up this last
Now,
little
do you
bit.
ever wear gloves for protection? I notice you're bumping into the guards. Are you not worried about cutting yourself?
I have cut myself and I survived. It wasn't fun. I don't wear gloves. I don't know. Somebody has said once, and I don't know the value of the comment or not, but I've heard. No, I don't think it was you. I have heard any kind of a round wheel cutting machine that they don't recommend gloves, just because you can get your hand, whatever,
sucked in?
Yeah, whatever it is that's on your hand can get caught in the round wheel and actually pull it in. I've never had to wear gloves. I don't have a problem with the acid. You could wear rubber gloves, I suppose. The acid doesn't bother my hands. Your hands will be a little bit dry after handling it, but no, I've never worn gloves. That's probably something I learned from you. We learn by watching.
And we've had the school for, 30-some years, and
we only lost a couple not
figures,
patients,
yeah.
but students.
And we've had several people with little superficial Band-Aid cuts, but nothing dismembering.
We have another question. Can you flesh with a mini flesher?
What kind?
A mini flesher.
Mini flesher, yes, you can.
So that mini flesher is basically, if you're not familiar, it's basically the same concept as the fleshing machine here with the turned edge blade.
This is a mini flesh haul, and I think it's a very valuable little tool used in conjunction with that. It's got a little serrated blade that spins. This isn't the air version. The air version is very annoying. It's like revving up a motorcycle in the driveway. And they also make one for a Fordham tool, which is much quieter, and you can run it with a foot pedal. And you control the depth of your cut by the angle. If you tip it up, this guard is resting on the hide, not taking anything off. If you tip it down, the blade is coming in full contact. So by tipping it whichever way works for you, you just stroke it across. People that get really, really, really good with a knife, I think can flesh as fast and as even as a mini flesher. Yeah. But this is, when you see people texting in, this is what it is. Good tool, lots of people have them. I think, I have people say they flesh whole elk, like many elk with this. This makes a dished out, fleshing cut, and you need a very wide, flat fleshing cut. You need that hide to be very even. Works good in conjunction with that, can't be beat by itself. I wouldn't go that route.
Yeah. Asking a lot of a little tool versus a big tool here. And if you're tanning for efficiency, you definitely want to have a big, this is a 12-inch blade, is that correct? These are a 12-inch blade, so you can imagine the surface that contacts in 12 inches against a flat area versus the surface.
You're getting a really nice flat swipe. And now every time this goes back into the pickle, it swells a little bit, gets a little bit thicker. The fleshing machine works a little bit better the second time. And by the time you're on your last fleshing, it's going to be real fun just to see how close you can come. And you're going to want to get, we spent a lot of work on our ear bases. We rebuild the whole muscle and anatomy in our ears, and that does you no good unless you thin your ear skin. Paper thin. You want to get the ear leather so thin so that it'll conform to those muscles. Same with your animals, the blood vessels in your face. You know, if you have a short-haired deer, for instance, none of that's going to show if you have thick leather that's going to drum across everything. So thin, 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 and the more you do it, the better you get.
There's also still a whole bunch of work to the face, which time's probably
I just looked. I think we're running out of time.
Time's going to permit that we do that next week, but we'll take as much as we've done on the body for thinning. We're going to go up here into the face, and we have to split lips even further. We have to do nostrils and get all of this just as thin as you were saying this through the rest of the body.
And as brave as you could be, you can do it on this machine. Go as far as you can. When you chicken out, it's time to go with a knife. Next week we'll show you the scythe knife. Some of you have used these already. We'll show you other techniques on how to do all that. We'll try to have a lot of it done so we're get to the tanning process before too long. Might be 2 more sessions, I think.
Regarding the fleshing machine, does it matter which direction you go?
The blade itself is, for us, on the left-hand side because we're right-handed and we're going to pull from left to right. If I were left-handed, you could set this up by flipping the blade over and bringing it back the other direction. As far as the hair goes, the direction on the hide, it really doesn't matter until you get to the edges. If you were to go this way, your hair is easily sucked into the blade, and you can cut hair this way. But when you're in the body skin, I don't notice a difference.
I don't either. Not like a bird.
Yeah.
And another thing, mentioning the hair getting cut, we have in the past not paid attention. I noticed you're being real careful how you kept the show side of the deer away from the blade. We've had, especially students, flip the deer around, and they're moving the deer cape around, and they bump the whole haired hide into that blade, and it's like taking a razor blade against it. It'll cut it right off and leave a mark. So keep the hair side of the animal away from that blade. Leather only. That.
And then should you always shave from tail to nose?
No, actually, you can go any direction you want to, but I started up here with the face and then just kept working down the body this way. That's my habit.
It's all got to be done, and you develop your own technique. And we're going to give away, right?
Yes, we have a giveaway. Today we are giving away the fleshing dowel set.
We have a whole set, a really nice set of fleshing dowels, all different sizes, all different tapers. Monogram, Matuska Taxidermy Supply Company. There are 4 of them, I think, different sizes. And that's our giveaway today.
And that giveaway goes to Emma Smith. And Emma won today's giveaway by liking and sharing last week's live video.
Good girl, Emma.
Wow.
So make sure to do that for this one to be entered into next week's giveaway.
We can't. I see in the tannery there's one in there that says BMW on it. You know, and it's Brett's favorite stick. It might just be a wood stick, but if it's what works for you, you'll really miss it if it gets misplaced.
Eyes, lips, noses, all that stuff we did last week are great. And next week, when we get into the detail work, we'll have these out the whole time.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, everybody. And we'll see you next week, and we'll try to have some of this done and on one of them anyway, so that it's about ready. And then we'll show you how we do it. It's nothing but elbow grease and hard work, and you can tan things.